Samuel Gompers was one of the most prolific and notable revolutionaries in American history during the late 19th century. Throughout this presentation, we will be analyzing the impact Gompers had politically, socially, and economically during his time period.
Samuel Gompers was born in London, England on January 27, 1850. He was born into a Jewish family that was from Amsterdam originally. They then moved to London, England right before he was born. Samuel Gompers attended a free Jewish school until the age of 10. At that time, his family was very, very poor and needed his help financially to support the family. So he went to work making shoes at first, and then he went to work with his father in the cigar shop. He worked under his father as an apprentice for many years until they moved to New York when he was 13, and his father continued his family business and had Samuel Gompers helping him along the way. While he was apprenticing under his father, he still attended night school, where he learned very many different languages, which helped him develop a good work ethic to help organize all the unions he would later organize together. While he was working with his father, he was the first member of the International Cigar Union in 1864, and he was later elected president of this union in 1875. While he was at this union, he would talk with many people older than him while he was 16 years old and would have very educated talks about economics and how they can increase their wealth by working hard. Growing up poor really affected Samuel Gompers into his political view. He was a very big conservative and stayed far away from socialist parties and labor unions, for he believed that by working hard, you can create your own money. He also told his fellow union members that they should stay far away from dreaming big of getting a big money loan from, say, a lottery, and that they should also stay away from politics, for they are a waste of time. In 1886, Gompers became one of the leaders of the Organized Trade and Labor Union, and later he was elected president in this union and has become one of the biggest labor unions in the history of America. He has grown this labor union from 50,000 people to nearly 3 million people till 1924. These unions helped develop strikes to increase fair pay and fair working hours, and to also show people that the workforce is a very vital part of the American society today. The Organized Trade and Labor Union has become one of the biggest unions in American history and is a big influential part on why American society is still so big on the workforce.
American Federation of Labor, a national federation of labor unions in the United States founded in Columbus, Ohio, in December 1886 by an alliance of craft unions disaffected from the Knights of Labor, a national labor association. Samuel Gompers started the American Federation of Labor and served as president in 1886 through 1895 and also 1896 through 1924 until he passed away. The purpose of the American Federation of Labor was to organize skilled workers into national unions consisting of others in the same trade. The purpose was not unpolitical and aimed simply at shorter hours, higher wages, and better working conditions. Now, there are certain types of people that joined this group. Many members of these two groups were disgruntled members of the Knights of Labor, the most influential organization of unions in the United States during the 1870s. The AFL initially allowed only skilled workers to join the organization. Unskilled laborers initially did not have the representation under the AFL. The group also originally prohibited women, African Americans, and other racial minorities from joining the organization. Because the union did not attempt to organize unskilled workers, it made a few gains among new workers during the 1920s. When much of the growth of the economy took place in the mass production industries, such as automobiles, rubber, chemicals, and utilities. In fact, although Gompers' middle-of-the-road leadership helped make the AFL the largest and the most powerful union in the country compared to earlier decades, that was not very powerful and membership dropped dramatically. I can say that Samuel Gompers did some amazing things and stood for what he thought was right, so he led a boycott. In 1901, Gompers also organized a boycott to discourage consumers from buying Chinese rolled cigars. Although conservative in nature, Gompers was not afraid to call for a strike or a boycott. Gompers proposed that agreements contain clauses stipulating that employers hire only union members, the closed shop, and that any employee should be required to pay union dues. Employers advocated the open shop, which could employ non-union members. During the 1880s and 1990s, unions sought to secure and retain a foothold in such major industries as railways, steel, mining, and construction. It was the building trades where the craft principle was most dominant that the American Federation of Labor developed its largest membership. Miners merged their craft into United Mine Workers of America and industrial unions that admitted to membership of those working in and about a mine, whether skilled or unskilled. In 1892, the AFL affiliate in the steel industry struck in protest against wage cuts. The following bitter Homestead strike, the steel industry adopted on the open shop policy. Craft unions were able to secure collective bargains on railroads, but when some workers, a union of rail workers, their effect collapsed in the Pullman boycott of 1894.
How Gompers differed from the others. To begin, it must be understood that many people during the time in which Samuel first developed the American Federation of Labor made their own assumptions on Samuel due to the stereotypes of those that unionized at the time. For example, one that would unionize would be stereotyped as a socialist. But Gompers was an individual on his own, and here are some characteristics that contributed to this uniqueness. First, Gompers strongly believed in capitalism. Therefore, he had a great conflict with the Knights of Labor, because it was a union that was both open to skilled and unskilled workers. Gompers' capitalistic mindset did not settle with the Knights of Labor, because he believed that a position in a union must be earned off of merit and hard work, unlike the openness of the Knights of Labor. Next, businessmen during Gompers' construction of the American Federation of Labor usually opposed him because the businesses did not want to risk losing their strong control of their workers when they unionized. They looked at him to blame for their unhappy workers, rather than themselves for their low pay and harsh conditions. Moving on, Gompers preferred to always stick to the most pragmatic, or what he called bread and butter unionism, meaning he followed the ideology of demanding what they want through negotiations. But if those failed, then they would boycott or strike. Lastly, Samuel Gompers focused on keeping the American Federation of Labor open to only skilled tradesmen, practicing pragmatic unionism, and had no intention of overthrowing capitalism, which was the root of his rivalrous relationship with the socialists during his time. In the following slide, we will see how the relationship between Gompers and the socialists active in unions played out due to these differences. Gompers and socialism. Economically, you are unsound. Socially, you are wrong. Industrially, you are an impossibility. Samuel Gompers in speech, Trade Unionism versus Socialism. This quote is found at the end of a speech given by Gompers addressing the socialists that have challenged the AFL and himself in 1903. In the speech, Gompers had an angry and disappointed tone because he was reacting to the extension of sympathy to multiple socialist unions in which he did not agree with. As stated before, the general public during the 1890s associated Gompers unionism with socialism. But given the following circumstances, it was clear Gompers was not a socialist. The feud between Gompers and socialists began in 1890, when socialists took over the Central Labor Union in New York. This caused a dispute with the AFL, which Gompers was president of. Soon, the head of the Socialist Labor Party, a separate socialist party from the Central Labor Union, previously mentioned, tried to take over the AFL from Gompers. But Gompers succeeded as president, and the Central Labor Union eventually fell apart in 1893. In 1902, another group of socialists then emerged, calling themselves the Western Federation of Miners. Then, in 1903, the Western Federation of Miners conducted a violent strike in Colorado, and the leaders were eventually arrested. In addressment of the occurrences in Colorado, Gompers then delivered a speech, as mentioned before in the above quote. The speech was titled Trade Unionism versus Socialism, in which he established his brutal disagreement with the socialist philosophies. This speech is just one example of how Gompers was able to compose himself and respond to opposing theories and ideologies through well-written speeches that displayed his leadership. A quote from the speech to conclude Gompers' feelings towards socialism is as follows. Is it not a fact that no matter what we achieve, we are belittled by the socialists? This quote stands to prove that Samuel Gompers finds no logical sense behind socialist opinions and views towards economical, political, and social matters. He is expressing his feelings that they are so ignorant to progress and that no matter how successful the capitalistic government may be, socialists will be blind to it because they are so consumed in their own philosophy. If anyone had doubts up until 1903 that Samuel Gomper was a socialist, their doubts had now been resolved.
Famous quotes by Samuel Gompers. The laborers must learn to think and act, and soon, too, that only by the power of organization and common convert of action can either their manhood be maintained or their rights to life be recognized and liberty and rights secured. This was said by Gompers in his letter on labor in industrial society to Judge Peter Grosscut. Gompers was very devoted and vocal regarding the unionization of rights and laborers, as the government wasn't very vocal or concerned with the rights of laborers at this time. Hungry stomachs may create a riot, but never a successful revolution. This was said by Gompers in his address in the AFL convention on November 24th, 1924. Gompers believed in resolving issues within society through civilized meetings and organizations in order to properly accommodate for the larger public's needs. If ever men have demonstrated their incapacity, their impotence to conduct commerce and industry, the men in command of our economic and social conditions have certainly given plain proof of it. This was said by Gompers on July 5th, 1895. Gompers was clearly hysteric and very upset towards his government, which has all autonomy over the economy, of course, in their handling of how they are mistreating and misusing and abusing, in fact, the laborers in many ways. Gompers was very and extremely vocal against the government's handling of the economy and believed that they were incapable of properly controlling the economic aspects of the country, specifically regarding laborers. The trade union represents the organized economic power of the workers. It is in reality the most potent and the most direct social insurance the workers can establish. This was said by Samuel Gompers in The American Federationist in January 1917. Page 47. Gompers was very vocal on the union movement and helped evolve the minds of many laborers early in the 19th century. He has also helped develop and change the minds of many laborers throughout our times today. The worst crime against working people is a company which fails to operate at a profit. Unfortunately, this was said by Gompers at an unknown time, but is one of the most and one of his most known quotes, and one of the most known quotes to help steer the mind of the laborers in the time that he was living in, to help steer their minds in the sense that they should be unionized and organized instead of rioting and taking aggression to the streets to get things that they felt that they deserved, such as higher wages, better living conditions, better working conditions. All these things that they were very deserving of, the people didn't in fact know how to actually appeal to the government and get these things. And this is where Gompers came to play and where he was one of the main revolutionaries. Gompers understood the civilization that you needed to have, the proper manner to address the problem, and how to become organized and actually address the problem and get it dealt with.
Gompers' legacy. Samuel Gompers was the longest-serving president of the American Federation of Labor. Under Gompers, the American Federation of Labor grew from 50,000 members in 1886 to approximately 3 million in 1924. At the Versailles Peace Conference in 1919, Gompers was appointed to help create the International Labor Organization, which became the basis for the New Deal endorsements of labor rights that were to come in the 1930s. In 1955, the American Federation of Labor merged with the Congress of Industrial Organizations to form the largest labor organizations in the world. In conclusion, Samuel Gompers was a London native, born on January 27, 1850, and was forced to work in his father's cigar shop at a very young age. He then became the first member of the International Cigar Union, where he later became president of in 1875. Samuel Gompers started the American Federation of Labor in 1886 and was president up until his death in 1924. The American Federation of Labor formed unions for skilled workers in hopes to achieve shorter hours, higher wages, and better working conditions. Gompers strongly believed in capitalism, which later led him into some trouble with the Knights of Labor, an opposing organization. He also openly opposed socialism, despite previous claims of association. His boycott of Chinese rolled cigars in 1901 was a huge statement, considering his conservative nature.
Thank you guys for listening to our presentation, and we all hope that you have learned more on Samuel Gompers, his view on socialism, and how he has impacted American history through developing labor unions to the extent in which his federation has now merged into another federation to form the world's largest labor union.